After years of starring on one of reality television's biggest family shows, did the Duggar children ever see a fair share of the money their lives helped generate? Recent revelations from one of the adult siblings paint a picture that has left many longtime viewers stunned. According to accounts shared by Jill Duggar in her memoir and related interviews, her father Jim Bob controlled the payments from TLC for nearly a decade while the kids themselves received little to nothing for the hundreds of hours they spent on camera. Then, when questions finally arose, the offer that came back was something few expected: $10 an hour. That single detail has reignited conversations about the financial side of 19 Kids and Counting and its spin-offs. What began as a wholesome look at a large Arkansas family eventually raised harder questions about contracts, control, and compensation. Today we're walking through the verified details that have come to light, the sequence of events that led to that low hourly figure, and how the story has continued to unfold. Stick around, because the full picture involves more than just one surprising number. The Duggar family first stepped into the national spotlight in the mid-2000s through specials on Discovery Health and later TLC. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, along with their growing number of children, became known for their conservative Christian beliefs, large family size, and highly structured home life. The series 19 Kids and Counting turned them into household names. Viewers watched the older children graduate, court, marry, and begin families of their own, all while cameras rolled. Behind the scenes, the business side of the show was handled almost entirely by Jim Bob through a company called Mad Family. Contracts with TLC directed payments to that company rather than to individual family members. According to figures later estimated by Jill Duggar, the family enterprise received roughly $8 million over the course of the original series and related specials. Episode fees started around $50,000 for a half-hour episode and climbed higher for longer formats, with additional money for weddings and births. Yet many of the children who appeared week after week have stated they never received regular paychecks for their time. That claim forms the core of the financial tension that eventually surfaced once some of the adult siblings began asking questions. The story did not stay quiet forever. When Jill and her husband Derek started pressing for clarity, the answers they received set off a chain of events that still shapes how people talk about the Duggars today. Jill Duggar has described in her 2023 memoir Counting the Cost and in subsequent interviews how the arrangement worked in practice. She and her siblings were expected to participate in filming that could consume many hours each week. Contracts existed that, on paper, allocated a small percentage of episode fees to the children. Jill has stated that those amounts were never actually paid to them. Instead, the money remained under Jim Bob's control. When Jill and Derek began asking about compensation, the conversation took a turn that has been widely reported. According to Derek's account shared in interviews promoting the book and the related documentary series Shiny Happy People, Jim Bob responded by asking what they wanted and then floated the figure of $10 an hour. Derek recalled the exchange as surprising given the scale of the show's success. That hourly rate, if applied across the years of filming, would have amounted to far less than the overall revenue the family company had received. The story did not end with the hourly suggestion. Jim Bob later gathered some of the older adult children and offered each of them a one-time lump sum of $80,000. The catch, according to Jill's telling, was that they would need to sign a new contract with the family company. Jill and Derek declined to sign. They have said they were concerned about the terms and the ongoing control the agreement might give. Eventually Jim Bob provided the $80,000 without the signed contract. Even that payment did not fully resolve the matter. Jill has written that tax documents later showed higher amounts of income attributed to her than she had actually received. The couple faced IRS correspondence related to those figures. After consulting an attorney, they reached a further settlement with Jim Bob. Jill has publicly stated that the total amount she ultimately received for years of filming came to $175,000. She has described that sum as modest relative to the overall earnings of the show and the time invested. Throughout these accounts, Jill has emphasized that the arrangement left the adult children without the financial independence many expected after a decade in the public eye. Some of the siblings, she noted, continued living with limited resources even as the family company invested in real estate and other assets. Derek has separately described periods when the young couple struggled with everyday expenses despite the visibility the show provided. It is important to note that these details come primarily from Jill and Derek's own statements and published memoir. Jim Bob has not offered an extensive public rebuttal of every specific claim in the book. The broader Duggar family has largely avoided detailed comment on the financial disputes in recent years. The original series ended in 2015 after serious allegations involving the oldest son, Josh Duggar, and a spin-off called Counting On continued for several more seasons with a smaller group of siblings. Jill and Derek eventually stepped away from filming. The revelations landed at a moment when public interest in the Duggars had already shifted. Documentaries and books examining the family's beliefs and internal dynamics found large audiences. Jill's memoir added a personal financial chapter to that ongoing conversation. Readers and viewers learned that the cheerful on-screen image had coexisted with private questions about money, autonomy, and fairness that took years to surface. Public response to these accounts has been mixed but largely attentive. Many longtime fans expressed disappointment that the children who grew up on camera appeared to have received so little direct compensation. Social media discussions frequently highlighted the $10 an hour figure as particularly striking. Commentators noted the contrast between the family's public image of provision and the private reality described by Jill. At the same time, some observers urged caution. They pointed out that the information comes from one side of a family dispute and that internal family finances can be complicated. Others focused on the broader issue of how reality television often structures contracts so that parents or guardians control earnings for minor and even adult participants. Media coverage generally treated Jill's claims as her perspective rather than undisputed fact, while still giving the story significant attention because of the Duggars' long television history. Supporters of the family sometimes argued that the show had provided opportunities and a platform